Today's church tech tip is GearSupply.com. To talk to us about this tip, please welcome to the Tech Arts Podcast, the CEO and Chief Gear Guru of GearSupply, Mendel Rosenberg. Hey, Mendel.
Hey, how are you? Excited to be on the podcast.
So tell me a little bit about that title, Chief Gear Guru. I guess that means you run the shop, huh?
It does. It leans, it's a self-appointed title, but it leans into what we're doing and what I really want to be running. I don't want to be known as a chief accountant or chief marketing. It's definitely gear focused. All of our sales reps are called gear gurus. And the idea is like if you were in a Tesla dealership, they're not selling you on price. They're not pushing the price. They're selling you on the value of what they're offering. And they don't have differences in commissions based on what the price is. It's all just on the actual value. We run a similar model where our gear gurus should really be selling the product that we're selling, being able to tell you what this gear is worth, how it's going to be worth in the next 2-3 months, how it depreciates, etc. The best times to buy, the best ways to buy. I mean, we're definitely not the experts in installation. We let the installers do that kind of stuff. We sell to the installers. We're the experts in buying and selling gear.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about, for our audience who doesn't know, what does GearSupply do?
An interesting story, actually. For those of you who don't know, I'm an Orthodox Jew, if you couldn't tell. And I'm Sabbath observant, which means I can't use my phone, drive a car, definitely can't go to work on the Sabbath, which is Friday night sundown through Saturday night sundown. So I moved to Cincinnati. My wife was studying nursing. I was studying concert production, and I figured she probably has a better shot at paying the bills. So I moved down from Tel Aviv, actually, moved to Cincinnati, tried to get a job in concert production, interviewed by a company, one of the biggest shops around in this Ohio region, and got the dial by name directory, hit Steve because it's an American company. There's probably a Steve working there. Sure enough, there was a Steve working there, and he's in charge of all the tech teams. And he said, yeah, why don't you come in tomorrow for an interview? He gave me an interview, gave me a job on the spot. And then I said, Steve, I can't work on the Sabbath. So Friday night through Saturday night, I'm off the clock. And Steve said, that's kind of an issue. That's half the work week. And I said, I get that. And I understand if this isn't going to work out. But is there anything else I can do? And Steve was nice enough to say, yeah, there is. We got tons of used gear. He took my resume back and looked through my resume and saw that I had sold things online. And he said, yeah, we have tons of used gear. Maybe you can sell our used gear online. And I said, yeah, that sounds cool. I'll do that. And my hope was that I'd get back into concert production. And I started selling off some of their gear. They walked me out to their warehouse. I think their warehouse is like 100,000 square feet. And you walk out and you're already about a fifth of the way through the warehouse. And I see this huge warehouse. That's like you walk out and that's what you see in front of you. And then he says, now turn around. And I turn around and there's this side of the warehouse that's dark. And it's like 20% of the warehouse. And there's shelves full of stuff. And I said, okay, yeah. He's like, all of that is gear we're not using anymore. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And he says, grab a folding table and a chair and get to work. And I set up a little photo booth. And a buddy of mine who's very industrious and has a lot of business acumen and also comes from a wealthy family, so has money to play with. I definitely don't. He reaches out to me and says, hey, what are you up to? And I said, oh, I'm doing this and this, but I want to get into concert production. And he said, Mendel, why don't you find out if this is an issue that plagues other companies as well? Because maybe this used gear thing is actually somewhere where you could really provide value. And I said, yeah, that's a good idea, but I don't really know how I would help. And he said, call up a bunch of companies and start buying their gear, their used gear, if that is indeed an issue. And we'll split it. We'll go 50-50. You run the business, I'll put up the money, and we'll go 50-50. And sure enough, that's how GearSupply was born. I started calling production companies, realized this is not just a needle in a haystack issue. It's a haystack and a needle issue. There's every single production company basically has issues with used gear. And I'll get into the actual what the company does in a second. But effectively, that's how GearSupply was born, just because I couldn't work on Sabbath, and told the guy, do you have anything else for me? And sure enough, got this role and started calling production companies. And sure enough, it was a very, very much needed issue that we were able to solve. So that was the starts of Gear Supply.
Well, I think that's cool because I think it says to our audience, you can hold to your values and still do what you love. I think a lot of people feel like in today's world, in today's secular world, that sometimes they have to give up on their values and what they hold dearest in order to do what they love. So yeah, get into what Gear Supply does. I mean, I think based on that story, we kind of figured out it's used gear and you're kind of supplying used gear, but kind of tell us what you guys do.
Yeah, sure. And just to jumping back on that value side, I have found, and I talk to people in the community about this all day long, that a value-driven company is a company that lasts. And when we hire people, thank God we have a decent-sized team now. Um, we look for people that have values, not necessarily values that I agree with. Obviously, if somebody's unethical, that's a different story. But I don't always agree with people's, political opinions or values. But I need to know that somebody has a backbone, because we're a company that has a backbone. And so value-driven companies are companies that last. And you read any of these legacy, older, GE, Microsofts. Obviously, they become a little bit corporate these days. But you read how they started and how they really got their first 10 years into their business. And it's all about the relationships and the value and the backbone and really being a company that people can rely on.
So it sounds like whether you're a global production company or a local sound guy, it sounds like what you guys are doing is making buying and selling AV gear simple, fast, affordable, and easy for those guys. Does that kind of sum up what GearSupply.com does?
That's spot on. There's two sides of the business. We started just buying gear, and we buy gear in bulk. And primarily we're buying it through trade-ins. And we still do that. This is a very active part of our business. We work with integrators, and we work with manufacturers, and we work with dealers. And we say, hey, next time you go to sell a client a system, find out what their old gear is. And usually the question starts a little different. Hey, do you guys buy back your client's old gear? And they usually say, no, we're sitting in an office somewhere. Where are we going to put that? Or no, we don't have $300,000 to pay this church for all their old Milos. And then I continue with the pitch. Okay, we'd love to help you. We can set up a trade-in program with you. And we work with the manufacturer or the dealer or the integrator, and they send us a lead and they say, hey, we're doing a deal in this church, and here's the gear that they have. And we send it back. We say, this gear in Times Square Church is worth $200,000. Great, $200,000. They go back to Times Square Church and say, Times Square Church, we're doing a $2 million installation. You only need to come up with $1.8 million because you have a $200,000 credit for your old gear. On paper, and if anybody has questions about this, they can email me, purchasing@GearSupply.com. But on paper, on the back end, we do our deal, and with the manufacturer gives the client a credit. And then, this is the most important part, when they go to ship that new gear to the client, we show up the same day to take out the old gear. So it's like trading in a car. You drive on the lot with your old Nissan, and you drive off with your new F-150. It's the exact same deal over here. The client sees the new gear come in, sees the old gear go out, same day. We've done deals where we've been in and out within a couple hour time frame because they had a show the day before and a day after. And that install was happening exactly on that day, and we needed to be there exactly on that day to pull out the gear. So we're pretty efficient. We can buy gear anywhere in the US in under 4 business days, and we pay 70 to 80% of market value. So that's the first side of the business. During COVID, things got pretty slow. For those of you in the audience who don't know, COVID kind of destroyed our industry for a couple months, although I'm sure everybody knows that very well. Because of that, we didn't want to lay everybody off. We had a team of great people, and we ended up pivoting to making a marketplace because we were really good at buying gear. We had the supply side of the gear down pat. That's what we're called, Gear Supply. We had a ton of manufacturer relationships. We do trade-ins for L-Acoustics, quite a bit for D&B, for JBL, for Meyer, for a bunch of the console manufacturers. We're doing trade-ins for everybody. For many of those, we're exclusive, and we're very good at getting the gear, but struggled selling the gear because we have to sell it through brokers and sell through Facebook Marketplace and sell through eBay, which is not designed for selling high value items. And we just struggled. And we're so focused on growing those supply relationships that we never really cared that we're leaving tons of money on the table by using all those services I just mentioned, plus huge headache to work with those services. And I knew eventually we'd create a marketplace, but COVID kind of sped that up. We put this marketplace out. We did about $1 million in transactions. And it was a total like duct tape together, canoe. Like we're just, plugging holes as we go. And the platform was not ready. We just did this proof of concept. We put $50,000 in, sent it off on the water. And sure enough, it floated and it actually traveled quite far. And we did $1 million in transactions in the first 3 months. And we said, holy crap, like there is a market here and people are ready to transact digitally online. Our biggest differentiator is that we only charge 6%. So if you use a broker, you could be paying 10 to 20%. Use eBay, you could be paying 13%. And there's issues with all those. You use Facebook Marketplace, you're getting scammed. So there's issues with all those three tools. And we said, we're going to just focus on core issues that people need us to help them with: the transaction, the shipping, the marketing, and let people who know this gear well negotiate with their customers. They don't need us to do that for them. They know how to sell this gear. They know what it's worth. So we're not transacting for you. We're helping facilitate and close that. We're helping with the tax compliance. We're helping with logistics. We're helping with inventory management. But as far as actually selling the gear, our industry knows what they're doing. Like they know this gear. They pitch it to people on riders all day long. They can pitch it to another industry customer. And it's not fair to charge them 20% to just do 2 or 3 of those things, which we can technologically optimize and not need to actually have a physical person physically calling every single freight company. We can create freight tools that do that for them. And on the platform, it has all that.
It sounds like between the marketplace and the trade-in programs and the transparency and scale that you guys do, that sets you apart from some of the other companies that are doing this. And plus the personal touch with the Gear Guru that's kind of helping you through the whole process, depending on which side of the business that you're on. It sounds like that sets you apart from a lot of the other companies. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, like we're not reinventing the wheel on any of this. And I think you said it perfectly. The difference between us and everybody else is the scale that we're doing it. We have 40,000 historical pricing points that we've tracked across our own sales, across sales of auctions and all the other platforms and websites. And that makes us be able to get really comfortable with the gear where somebody thinks maybe this gear is worth 100,000, maybe it's worth 90, maybe it's worth 80. So I'm going to offer 50. We know it's worth 100,000. So we're going to offer 70 to $80,000 because we know that we can sell it. We know exactly how we're supposed to sell it. We have exactly the market to market that to. So on the direct side, we're always going to be paying more. The only person that's going to pay more than us is an end user.
So Mendel, I'm sitting at home listening to this. How do I get in touch with you? How do I get the whole process started?
Sure. There are a few ways that you can sell gear. You can sell to us directly. If you're large enough, you can become a preferred vendor, which means we directly manage your inventory for you. Or you can list it as a community listing, which is 100% free, but you don't have access to some of the inventory management or payment tools that we give our bigger vendors, like a PRG or Solotech or some of the bigger production companies. So those are the 3 ways you can do that. If you go right onto GearSupply, you'll see right in the corner it says sell. And if you feel like you should be a preferred vendor, reach out. We'll help you do that. Or you can just sell us the gear directly. So again, those are the 3 ways you can sell to us, list it as a community listing, or become a preferred vendor on the platform.
To get in touch with GearSupply, you want to go to GearSupply.com. If you want to get a hold of Mendel directly, you have something there. It's purchasing at GearSupply.com. If you have some questions about setting things up, you can go and email them at team@GearSupply.com. But you shouldn't have any problems. You go to GearSupply.com. You can click on sell. It is truly the easiest way to buy and sell used AV gear. So go to GearSupply.com. Mendel, thanks for coming on to the Tech Arts podcast and telling us about your company.
Awesome. Thank you.